Hello and welcome. In this video lecture, we will be talking about C preprocessors. Now, C preprocessor is not a part of compiler, but it is a separate step in the compilation process. So, in simple terms, we can say that C preprocessor is just a text substitution tool. And it instructs the compiler to do required pre-processing before the actual compilation. We will be referring the C preprocessor as CPP. Okay, so the purpose of CPP is text substitution and substitution tool, you can say. And what this tool instructs, it instructs the compiler to do some pre-processing before having the actual compilation. Compiler to do pre-processing. Okay, now the pre-processing is the activities or the things which should be done before the actual compilation takes place. Okay, so all pre-processor commands we need to define in order to have this thing to be done before the compilation. So there is a symbol called hash symbol. Okay, this hash is used. Okay, it's a bit wider. Okay, this hash symbol is used for preprocessors. That means whatever we write after the hash symbol, that will be taken care as a pre-processing part before actual compilation, and whatever written in that, accordingly the code will be included. So it must be the first non-blank character in the program, and we also call it as preprocessor directive. Okay, I'm just writing it, preprocessor directive. I hope you must have read that earlier also when you have written the first C program, that why we write this hash include some standard library file. So this hash is preprocessor directive, and this particular directive just say that it is the preprocessor part that should be included or that should be substituted in the program or the actual code of the source before the compilation takes place. So we have a list of directive and their description. Some common are we have already used, like define, hash include, hash if, hash error, right? So I'll be sharing the whole list of these things, and we can use them one by one in the example. So here is the example of the directives and their description. So I hope first two, hash define and hash include, we all have used in our normal C program. So hash define substitutes preprocessor macro, hash include inserts a particular header from another file, hash undef is undefines a preprocessor macro, if def returns true if this macro is defined, and likewise we have if not defined, if, else, elif, end if, error, and pragma, that is issues a special command to compiler using standardized methods. So we have a different type of preprocessors which can be included in the program, and the purpose of this preprocessor is to put the actual code, line of code, in the source file before compilation takes place. So now we will be looking at some of the example set to understood that what is the meaning of these various directives here. Okay, so let us take an example of, let's suppose I write hash define max array size (20). Now this directive tells the CPP to replace the instance of max array size with 20. Okay, so we use hash define. This we used for constants to increase the readability in the code, that if we want to define any constant like this maximum size of the array, we can use this preprocessor. Another example, let's say if we have hash include and this we have probably done in each and every program of C which you have written up till now. Standard input output, a header file we include, or we can also include some this is the system defined library, right? This directive tells to get the standard input stdio.h system library. This is our system library. Okay, and add the text to the current source file where we have written this hash include stdio.h. Likewise, we can also include our user defined, let's say if I create, okay, let's not use this, if I create my header file, then we can also use our own defined files, like let's say I have defined my header.h file, okay, which we have already written. Now we can also tell the CPP to get my header.h from the local directory and add the contents to the current source file. Like if in my header file I have defined certain functions, then I can directly utilize those functions from this by including this header file in my code. So this is user defined library. Okay, coming back to some more example, let's say if, okay, fine, if I write hash and let's say undef, and then I write file size, okay, and I'm using the same example set which we have defined here in the what are the different directives and description part. So let's say define file size to let's say 42. Okay, now in this the CPP will understand or we are going to tell by this preprocessor directive that undefined existing file size, and now we define it as 42. Like undef is when something is not defined file size, then I define by writing define file size as 42. It is similar to declaring the size of the array as 20 in the above example. Okay, the part is that whatever be your application, whatever extra line of codes which you have already written somewhere, either they are present with the system library or you have defined or you have created your own library, you can always utilize or include that code, right? We can have one more example. Let's say we have seen the if like this. So hash if and def. Now the meaning of if and def is already defined there, and the meaning is if not defined, if something is not defined. Now what is that something? Let's say suppose MESSAGE, message is something which we are talking about, that if and def, that means if not define the value of message, then define message, MESSAGE, message as hello dear. Okay, and then we have our end of if and if. So it is similar like the if condition, if else loop, but the only part is if something is defined in our program, it is okay. But suppose if some value is not defined, then you can declare default values as well here. Like if the message is not defined, then define the default value for messages hello dear, right? So these are some of the example which we have taken from the list. There are more you can create, but the point is which you have to keep in the mind that we need to understood that preprocessor is not a part of compiler, but it's a separate step in the compilation process, and all such required line of code should be present in the actual source code before compilation. So we use the preprocessor to fetch or get those line of codes or extra text to be present in the current source file. That's all in this video. Thank you for watching.